Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wait, What? A show where we explore aliens, the afterlife, and why the fuck we are here on this planet Earth. I am stand-up comedian Krystyna Hutchinson. This is my co-host, author Daniel Pinchbeck.
Yay.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Daniel.
Hey,
How you
Krystyna, how's it
doing?
going?
It's good. How are you?
Good.
Welcome to Wait, What? I'm Krystyna Hutchinson. You are?
Daniel Pinchbeck.
And let's just start off going over who we are so that the audience can get to know us and then we can get to know each other.
That sounds like a
I
great
know you a
great
little
plan.
bit.
Yeah,
We met twice.
just twice.
You know, there's a lot of people on this planet that call themselves nerds. But you are like a certified smart nerd.
Super nerd.
Yeah, and I really admire that. You know a lot more words than I do. I'm probably going to ask you a lot what the words you're saying mean. And I'm excited to get the knowledge that is in your brain. Give me a little background on your story and your professional your resume.
Sure. I mean, so I grew up in New York City. My parents were like writers, artists. My dad was an abstract painter.
Wow.
My mother had actually been, when she was young, she was involved in the Beat Generation in New York in the late 50s.
Oh man.
And she actually dated Jack Kerouac for like a year and a half.
You're the coolest nerd I've ever met.
And wrote a book later about that time in her life called Minor Characters.
Whoa.
So she was a writer and a book editor, and I always wanted to be a writer. I dropped out of college. I started working in magazines, I guess in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. I was also trying to be a poet and a novelist, and edited a literary magazine with a bunch of friends called Open City. And then I began to get more and more kind of like existentially depressed. And I began to realize that everybody was kind of a believer in scientific materialism, including myself, the sort of skeptical, reductive materialism. So basically, we all believed that there was no possible existence of anything outside of this life.
Oh, and that's why you became sad.
Well, I mean, I began to realize that this was like an underlying tonality to the culture, that everybody in the media, art world, almost everybody that I knew was a materialist and really didn't believe that anything could exist outside of this life, like that there was no soul or spirit or consciousness beyond this body.
Artists were materialists.
Yeah, I would say almost.
Wow.
I would really say that it was. I mean, I think it's still very much largely the case. That's why it's important to keep coming back to it. I mean, most people, even if they're now into like meditation or psychic stuff, are still basically identify themselves as materialists. I mean, it's still kind of the main way of thinking about the world, right? In the academy or the media or whatever,
Right.
New York Times or whatever, you can't really talk about the types of subjects that we want to talk about in the mainstream media, which is also what makes them kind of enticing and fun, right? In a way.
Hell yeah.
So then I was kind of asking myself in my late 20s, how could I figure out if there really is nothing else or if there is something else? And at that point, I remembered psychedelic experiences from college, mushrooms and LSD. So I decided that I would explore that because I was now a journalist. I wrote for like the New York Times and Village Voice and Rolling Stone. So I started to
Whoa.
get different assignments to go and take psychedelics.
So you had taken them kind of recreationally before.
Just mushrooms and LSD, but I had one friend who was a sort of a late generation New York school kind of beat poet. He told me about ayahuasca, so I ended up doing ayahuasca maybe like 89 or 90 in like an apartment downtown. Have you done ayahuasca?
You're so cool.
Have you-
You're the coolest nerd. I've not done ayahuasca. No, I've done mushrooms a couple times, and I did ketamine therapy
Okay,
a
cool.
couple times, which was very
LSD?
gentle. Oh, you know what? I microdosed acid at a Skankfest, which is a comedy festival that was
Skankfest.
in Las Vegas, and I microdosed it, and I had like a laugh-gasm. Like I was laughing so hard. Someone
Yeah.
said something funny, but it made me laugh so hard, and I was just crying, and it was a most amazing feeling. So I'm like, man, if this is a microdose,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So anyway, so I started taking mushrooms and LSD again, but then I wanted to try these other substances. So I got assignments. So for the Village Voice, I wrote about ayahuasca. And then I got this magazine. I remember Vibe magazine. It was like a hip hop magazine.
Yeah.
They sent me to Gabon, to West Africa, to go through an African initiation with a group called the Bwiti, who use a substance. It's like the only sort of psychedelic known to Africa, like that's from there, which is called iboga. And it's a root bark powder that they scrape off. It's incredibly horrible tasting. and it sends you on like a very long, like 20, 25-hour trip.
Oh shit.
So I did that experience, which was very difficult, in some ways comical, in some ways profound.
How?
Well, I mean, I met this sort of South African botanist who'd been studying with this tribe, this community. And but he was actually, he'd sort of claimed like he brought a lot of people to this experience, but actually he'd only brought one other person, and that person had like taken, sedatives and like run away during the ceremony or something.
Uh-oh.
So it was me and this other woman, and he didn't really have a good relationship with the shaman. The shaman in that community is called a Nganga.
Okay.
He was this very kind of big personality. He called himself the king, Mutamba, the king. And apparently he wasn't satisfied with the amount of money that we were giving him for the ceremony, so he kept asking more money for. We went down to his like indigenous village in the jungle, and his sons would be like cleaning the hunting rifles, and he would be like screaming at us to get more money from us before the ceremony.
Wow.
So we didn't go in with a lot of trust. We got all the way to do it.
We weren't exactly relaxed.
Yeah, exactly. But then the experience itself was very, very extraordinary. It was very psychological. You could even say like psychoanalytic. Like I went through a lot of early childhood material. I saw different scenes, kind of relived different aspects of my early life that I wasn't even consciously aware of anymore.
That you maybe shoved down? Like
yeah, exactly.
Aspects or moments that like one could say were like traumatic or just hard for you.
Yes,
or
exactly. Like my parents fighting, arguing when I was a little kid, or illnesses I'd had. I was in the hospital when I was 11 for like 6 or 7 months, so some of that came back, and there was this sort of sense of like it was like showing me almost how I'd been constructed as a person, and then sort of at the same time there was a sort of positive message at the end of it, which is that you could actually change your if you had enough willpower, you could like rewrite your history or recreate yourself in some sense.
Whoa. Did they say how, or they're just like figure it out, see you later?
Figure it out. I guess. Figure it
man.
out. I guess the willpower was the big. Yeah. So then there were also more visionary aspects to it. Like I saw like eyes open visions of like what seemed to be the spirit of Iboga in like a wood statue, kind of walking across the room and so on. Anyway.
So you basically got proof that there is something beyond, even though it was facilitated by a psychedelic.
Okay, so this is like a big question, which is like what constitutes proof of the beyond and or whatever. I mean, of there being anything else. I mean, for me, one of the things that was really surprising was we did a second ceremony, and one of the shamans during that second ceremony had also eaten just a little bit of the iboga to sort of accompany us, and he said that he could see the spirit of my mother's mother hovering over me. And he was very confident. He was like, she died very recently and she loved you very much, but she's very possessive and she's not letting you see different aspects of the spiritual worlds.
Was that true? Did that ring as true?
Well,
to
it
you?
was extraordinary because, I mean, my mother's mother was the only grandparent I ever knew, and but she had died within a year. And she was a very forceful, but kind of like a suppressed personality. So it was possible for you to imagine her. But I mean, if he was, it just seemed like he couldn't possibly be guessing.
Right.
Because
those are specific attributes to a person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, also that he's, was so clear that it was my mother's mother who had passed away. So that for me was the first indicator that there was some kind of like transpersonal dimension of information.
Yeah.
That shamans and psychics can sometimes like accurately kind of pull from. But it really took me a long time. That was my first book, Breaking Open the Head. Actually, if you want, Gabe, you can put it up on the screen. The Breaking Open the Head. That was the sort of the sort of quest for my first book. I went through a number of these different experiences in the Amazon and Mexico and obviously one in Africa, and began to have a number of paranormal, psychic, supernatural type experiences.
Paranormal.
That over time made it clear to me that the materialist worldview could not be accurate.
Yeah, it's kind of bullshit. And it feels bullshit in a way. But it's like, one of the things I wrote down that I was thinking of last night was society pushes us, any society that you're born into, will push you to like certain things. Will push you to like marriage, for example, and wanting to have a kid if you're and then you grow up and you do these things and no one around is talking to you about like, do you want to do these things? And then as you get older, you're like, wait, I don't like this shit. I don't want to be doing this.
Yeah.
And so seeking proof and evidence of things beyond the material world makes all of those pressures that you could possibly put on yourself, that society, that your parents, that your anybody in your life could put on you, they evaporate. And that's very powerful. But you were saying proof. What's the closest you've gotten to proof of like paranormal?
It's a good long story, which will unwind. But maybe like I would stop here in my story and ask you a little bit about your story. How did you get interested in this type of material? Like where I know a little bit about the podcast you've been doing and
Yeah,
comedy and so on.
co-host Guys We Fucked. Well, I watched the movie Matilda a lot as a kid.
Matilda, okay.
And it was starring Mara Wilson. And it was a book that got made into a movie. And she basically lives in a household that's extremely chaotic. She grows up with parents that, don't know her, that don't really care to be curious about her or nurture her in any way. And as a result, she develops magical powers and like makes shit move. And for some reason, I think, my older years, like researching all this stuff, learning about psychic phenomena in kids, I'm like, oh, it seems like kids are kind of born more open than adults, and then it just gets hammered out of you. When I was a kid, I would do what I know now is remote viewing, but I would do it all the time. Like if someone was coming to pick me up, if I wanted to go, where are they? I would get very impatient, very impatient person, very impatient kid as well. And I would go, where are they? And I would sit on my porch and close my eyes, and I would be in the back of their car. And then the second they turned down the road, I would look, and there's the car. And I'm like, that's cool. But I wasn't like, what are these powers? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And so one of the reasons why I leaned into all that stuff is because I had a very traumatic childhood. And it's when you live as an adult with really overwhelming emotions and you have an idea about where they're from, but you don't know exactly the roots of them, and you live with like inner terror, it pushes me more towards shit like ghosts. And when I really dive into what a psychedelic can do for PTSD, for example, or psychic mediumship, talking to somebody who's passed away and gaining knowledge from them, it makes all of those emotional issues that have been like kind of quelling in me, they don't have any importance anymore. They don't have a hold over me, because I'm like, there's magic on this planet and in the universe, and I'm determined to uncover it.
Seek it out.
Yes, I want to experience it. You were asking me earlier if I've ever had a ghost experience. I have not, because I think I'm too thirsty. I really want to see one. I want to communicate with one, and I think they're like, ew, bitch, like, you're desperate. I don't know. That's a guess. Yeah. But I imagine that energy is probably not inviting.
Yeah. Well, in terms of like invoking magical experiences, I mean, I definitely think of the psychedelics, ayahuasca is the most powerful for that. Maybe particularly when it's done, as close to its original context, with like
ceremonial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With like a indigenous person, or shaman, or something like that.
You've wrote a book about ayahuasca.
Yeah, I mean, the first time was for when I was working. Well, first it was in New York, but then I went down to the Amazon in Ecuador to visit a indigenous community called the Sequoia, which was a huge experience in my life on many levels. I'd never been to the Amazon before, and I was with people who knew the jungle very well, and they were very kind of traumatized when we went down there because they saw how much of the rainforest had been taken away. Oh. And what I learned was that essentially what happens is the oil companies would be finding prospects for oil in the rainforest. And they would jump in, and they would, mine, and they would, toxify the water, and sort of, bring in a lot of the, mestizos and local people, and to work in the mining concerns and so on. And basically, they would destroy like thousands and thousands of acres of rainforest permanently to retrieve enough oil to keep the U.S. supply going for about 3 days, 2 or 3 days.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah. Well, that's, that's what's happening like all over the world.
Is it dumb of me to be very surprised that you get oil from a rainforest? You get oil?
Yes.
I thought you got oil in the ocean.
Texaco, which is known as Toxico down there. Yeah, in fact, at some point it might be fun for us to, if we want to veer off the paranormal topics, this guy, Steven Donziger, was a lawyer who won this huge case against Texaco.
Wow. For
billions and millions of dollars, but as a result, Texaco, which has like sort of corrupt infiltration of the legal system, had him like imprisoned for 3 years, like under house arrest.
Whoa!
But he's a really great person to learn about. But anyway, yeah. So seeing the devastation of the Amazon, which I didn't have anything to compare it to, obviously, but I could feel how sad they were. And then meeting this incredible community of indigenous people who were elders. Like we don't even necessarily know how old they were, because when they were born, they weren't really on the clock. Like they weren't.
Oh wow.
They were
didn't have a birth
living.
certificate.
What's that? Yeah, they weren't. They were just living in the jungle as they had, and it's only like when they were in middle age that the sort of mestizo culture and the sort of modern world moved in.
Whoa.
But had a totally, unfortunately, as it's had all over the world, a very devastating effect on their culture. Apparently, around 1900, there was like 30,000 sequoia. By 2000, there was like 750 of them left.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But they have what's interesting about ayahuasca is there are many different indigenous cultures and different, groups with different languages who use it all across the Amazon basin. But a lot of them have very, very different approaches to it and ways of doing it. Like the Shipibo in Peru are sort of known as the doctors of the Amazon. Like if you have a serious health problem, you would go to the Shipibo. And they were like the surgeons, the magical surgeons. Their Icaros were all these healing songs. The Sequoia were a little bit more like sort of old jazz musicians or something, and they would kind of have this ceremonial lodge where everybody's lying in a hammock, and they would all sing together. And the ceremonial lodge became like this sort of spaceship or starship where they were, through the sound and the medicine, were able to sort of carry you into these different dimensions or different realities.
Dimensions.
I would say, yeah. They would also check with each other. Like they would stop singing, and you'd hear them talking in their language, and apparently they'd be saying to each other, like, "Oh, are you seeing the blue heavenly people now?" And they'd be like, "Yes, yes, I am." So they would sort of know they were in this sort of consensus space, in this other
all
reality.
On the same page, yeah, guiding you. Yeah. So what did you see when you did ayahuasca? Like, what was the most profound trip for you? Because
that's interesting. I've done it 100 times. I don't know,
Ooh,
80, 100
okay.
times. But so it's hard for me to isolate maybe just one.
Is it every time? Is it a different trip every time, or are there a lot of similarities?
It's actually very different. It can be very, very different.
And your mental state, I imagine.
But I haven't done it for a number of years now. I'm looking forward to do it. Maybe in May, I'm going to go do a dieta in Costa Rica.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I imagine you have to be the calmer you are, the better your experience could be. Is that or am I just taking that from mushrooms?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the Sequoia also really when they do the ceremonies, they really want people to be very quiet. Also, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think about. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to this again and again as like a topic.
It's just very interesting to me, the psychedelics, specifically how healing psychedelics can be when respected and understood. And I know that the ceremonial aspect to a lot of psychedelics is really important. And it's interesting, you said a lot of indigenous cultures have been using psychedelics for a long time for healing. And then
but not just for healing.
Or for transporting, or for, I guess, opening
hunting.
up.
I mean,
hunting.
I mean, tracking animals or like.
Whoa. But so opening up their abilities, essentially.
Yeah.
Because animals that operate around the electromagnetic field, if you could tune into the electromagnetic field, then you also have the similar sonar that a dolphin has, where it will make a noise and then it bounces back.
Yeah.
And that's how, or a shark rather, that's how far away a prey could potentially be. I watched a documentary about the iboga roots and how this woman who is suffering from heroin addiction, from getting prescribed opioid pills, from breaking her ankle or something like that, she tried to kick heroin for years and years and years, and she did the iboga ceremony twice, and no withdrawal side effects. So she kicked heroin and experienced none of the reason why it's so hard to kick heroin, is from what I've heard. I've never done it, but the withdrawals are so awful and terrifying and painful, and emotionally and physically. And there's a root from a tree that can alleviate this for you and take you through the journey of getting out of this addiction. That's insane. And then you look at, well, why isn't this talked about in America?
Yeah.
And other places?
Well,
and
it is getting talked about quite a lot, actually.
That's good. Yeah. That's exciting. But I could chalk it up to mainstream. It's never getting talked about. I guess I could chalk that up to drug companies having a foot in
Yeah.
politicians assholes?
Well, there's a lot of, I mean, there's different issues around it. But yes, I mean, I also have friends who got freed from heroin through iboga. And as you say, it seems to have a neurochemical kind of thing where like people, who are heroin, they have to be, they have to, not take heroin for a couple of days to be safe, but before they take the iboga. But afterwards, it will not have any withdrawal symptoms.
It's amazing.
And then it's really about, so it's like they've cleared the neurochemical dependency, but then it's kind of a question of how their lifestyle factors work. Because if they go back to the same sad basement apartment with the dealer's number by the phone, then they'll usually like relapse eventually because the same kind of psychological factors. But it gives people an opportunity or a clearing. In Breaking Open the Head, I remember there was I wrote about a medical study or theory anyway, that iboga may do something where it kind of like rebalances the hemispheres of the brain.
Oh.
That people who are addicts or people who have like, a lot of people who are addicts were also traumatized in childhood or whatever.
Does go hand in hand.
And so some kind of brain hemisphere imbalance happened. And iboga somehow rebalances the brain hemispheres. So you're back in,
Did you experience with iboga like reliving painful memories?
Yeah, iboga has a personality. People talk about, psychedelics as some of them being sort of more feminine and more masculine.
Oh, really?
You don't know?
What are the girl ones?
Ayahuasca is the mother or the goddess or whatever. But I mean, iboga definitely has a masculine personality. But it is sort of like a stern kind of like African American father who's like showing you all of your faults and flaws and kind of sort of like mocking you.
That's helpful though.
Yeah. But
did you get mocked when you did iboga?
Oh yeah, I mean,
look at little Daniel crying because his parents are yelling. Like I'd be like, that's.
Well, there was a period in that time where I saw kind of like my drinking patterns because at that point in my 20s in New York, I would drink too much alcohol at different social events, and I just saw like loops of myself like getting drunk and like acting poorly and then like being hungover the next day and non-functional. So it was like. It definitely was very pointed in a way.
Wow.
And a lot of people, when my friend, so I went down, the second time I did it in Mexico, I went with a friend who was struggling with heroin. And at one point he was saying to the iboga, iboga, like both of us during that experience had like kind of verbal, very, very verbal experiences where the iboga almost seemed to have like a voice and would kind of like shout things to our head. And he was like, iboga, I want to help humanity. How can I contribute to the world? And the voice shouted in his head, clean up your room, And that actually made a lot of sense because his room was a pigsty. Like it was really messy. And I don't know. So
and energetically, go further into that, like energetically, a physical mess in your living quarters can cloud your brain. And you want to give yourself the best shot of having a clear mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So very direct messages like that.
That's so cool. And so we've touched on psychedelics. Another area that, that just really lights my cells on fire is aliens. Mm-hmm. When the pandemic hit, had a lot of time on my hands. I watched all the documentaries on alien life and UFO sightings and crash sightings and that I could get my hands on. And I started the thing that was exciting about me about that particular time was I noticed a lot of consistencies. Every person that claimed to have encountered an alien, they all of them said not above 4 feet tall, similar to the depictions in pop culture with like the big eyes and the big head, but communicated telepathically.
But actually, there's other aliens, quote unquote, that people talk about, like the tall Nordics and so on.
Nordic aliens?
Yeah, that's one. If you get into the extraterrestrial lore. But you go. What were you saying?
Well, so I found that intriguing. I'm like, maybe there is, because maybe this could be true. And the more I kind of watched the documentaries, I was like, wait, but this could very much be true. What do you got on aliens? Like, what is in terms of the knowledge that you've gained? And
it's not a short conversation. I mean, I wrote about sort of extraterrestrials and UFOs a bunch in this book 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl, which was my second book. I also studied the crop circles in England.
Yeah. A lot of crop circles in England in particular.
Yeah, and I wrote another book called The Occult Control System, kind of like an update on what I wrote about in the 2012 book. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, it's a very interesting phenomenon. If you have to sort of like step back and think about it in different ways, like, one question is, I mean, there's so many sightings and so many like videos and photographs, but they're all very like terrible in a way. Like, you never
Yeah.
see like
Very blurry.
yeah. So it almost feels like it's a phenomenon that somehow deliberately maintains itself in this sort of fuzzy ambiguity or on like the periphery of consciousness.
Yeah.
Uh,
Why is that, do you think? Because I have a lot of questions that raised in my head after watching all these things. One is like, do they want to be seen? Or do they want to tease us? Like, do they want to be like, oops, now I'm not here, you know?
yeah, I mean, I think well, it's sort of like you know, I think part of our problem right now is we don't have like a proper kind of like angle or like way of thinking about a lot of stuff.
Right.
And we get sort of trapped in kind of dualistic ideas or like true or fake or whatever. I mean, um, yeah. I mean, it seems like it's somehow like a co-creative phenomenon. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something is happening, but what it is that's actually happening is extremely difficult to fully grasp.
Right. How
Uh,
should we look at aliens?
well, how do you look at them? What are your thoughts about
One
them?
of the things that really struck me
Yeah.
was their interactions with nuclear testing sites and all of the stories about them shutting off nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, they're like
Nuclear
nice.
missiles. Yeah.
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 So they're in a way, those instances, and there's been a lot of them documented, they save us from ourselves.
Yeah. What's the project called? Disclosure Project, right? Where
Okay.
they interviewed all these military commanders, and some of them talked about like working at a base underground in this in the 60s, and like a nuclear missile site, and a big craft appeared overhead, and all of the missile guided systems were deactivated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I watched about an encounter with an American soldier in Peru where there was a crashed craft on the side of a mountain, and he had this interaction with a being, and he said that it communicated telepathically, but he said, I've never felt so much love
Oh wow.
in my whole life, and I didn't know that was possible, and I didn't want him to go away, and I wanted to go with him. And that's also something I've heard about people who've had near-death experiences where they're engulfed with the most warmth that they didn't even know was humanly possible and the most amount of love that they've ever felt in their life, and they wanted to go back. They didn't want to go back to Earth.
Yeah.
And that made me go, Earth is fucking hard. It's a lot. It's a really hard little school that we've found ourselves in. But so I look at aliens as peaceful. There's also stories of like operations and
Yeah.
experiments. Do those have any validity in your opinion?
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, it's hard. It's a hard subject to even like talk about sensibly. But I mean, some of those stories seem to relate to kind of like old stories from the Middle Ages around like the fairies and the elves and so on, who used to kind of like pull people out of their world, and if you ate the food of the fairies, you'd be imprisoned forever in like the fairy world and so on.
That's rude.
So it's almost like there's like a transposition of some of that stuff that had a sort of certain quality back then of like fairies and elves, and now it's like aliens and spaceships and so
So
on.
we're just replacing them in a way.
This was like Jacques Vallée, who's like one of the most interesting like people who wrote about this stuff. Sort of had this theory that like there's this interactivity with an other, but it takes a form that sort of meshes with our kind of cultural ideas and conceptions at a particular time.
Okay, right. So would this line up with that theory of like a person can be inhabited by another life form and interact with people? Is that what you're getting at, or no?
Not exactly. It's more like I mean, I guess one of the things that interests me a lot is kind of as I mentioned, we're sort of trying to I believe that we're trying to transition out of materialism, like sort of reductive materialism, as like our belief system.
Yeah.
But then what is the new way of understanding reality?
Aliens, ghosts, and psychedelics.
Right, but the thing is that you can approach them just as, oh, this is so cool and this is so weird or whatever, but what is it actually? How do we understand the nature of reality that allows for these things to manifest, and how do we understand, like why they manifest in certain ways?
Do you think I've been presented with this theory by people across the board that write about aliens and ghosts and psychedelics, about that the human mind is just not capable of understanding certain concepts, and that is interesting, and it kind of hurts to think about a little bit because it confuses me. But I think that's true. Do you think that's true? Like maybe we're not, like you're saying, what's the nature of reality? Maybe we can't comprehend that.
But I mean, it's possible, but it's also possible. I mean that we can.
Yeah,
Because there were a lot of
I'd like to
things
believe
that we
it is.
couldn't understand
Right.
in the past, which we now understand.
Right, that's true. And we find the language to talk about it. Like, I always say to my friends, what I talk about with my friends and my partner is so different than what my parents were comfortable talking about with each other. And just that alone, like our emotional intelligence is really evolving as the generations keep happening and keep sprouting up. And so, I guess, it does make sense that we will be able to at some point find the words to really explore what reality is.
I think there are and that's you mentioned that I'm like a nerd. I mean, I love to read and I love to explore these topics like sort of philosophically and intellectually. And like, I think there are some writers who are really, really amazing at helping us think through this stuff. But they're maybe more like sophisticated than the really popular writers. Well, I mean, one of the people who matters like a huge amount for me is Rudolf Steiner.
Okay.
Have you heard of him?
No, who's that guy?
So he was like, I think he was born in like 1860. He was like Austrian or German, Austrian thing. And he apparently, when he was a little kid, he could just see into all these other worlds and realities and dimensions. It was kind of like he was always on DMT.
Lucky fuck.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And then he began to realize that people around him didn't have this ability. So he actually stopped talking about it. He made one friend in like his village who was like a gardener who possessed some of the same abilities, but he realized that it was like, he felt it was something that people used to have much more access to, but they'd lost access to. And somehow he had this special capacity where he had this access. And so he investigated it, but he didn't talk about it. So he waited until he was like 40, and he got like a philosophy degree, and he was like, was a doctorate, I guess. And he was like, he was assigned to, I think, archive like Goethe was one of the biggest like intellectuals in like Germany, like Goethe's like science papers. I mean, Goethe also, anyway, it was complicated. But anyway, then he got involved with theosophy. Have you ever heard of like Madame Blavatsky?
No, I don't know what theosophy is.
That was like a late 19th century movement. Like Madame Blavatsky was this like super weird kind of like medium channel who like
love her.
Went to Egypt and like basically claimed that she was in contact with these sort of like invisible masters.
Okay.
And wrote these like huge books around like, Atlantis and Lemuria and like, kind of like put pieces of like Eastern mysticism and Western esotericism like together. The secret teachings.
And she was channeling a lot of this?
Yeah, sort of channeling. She claimed that she was in touch with these like invisible masters. It became like a big movement. You ever heard of like Krishnamurti?
Mm-mm.
Krishnamurti, they sort of, the Theosophists ended up kind of like finding this young Indian boy who somehow they thought was going to be like the great teacher of humanity or like the Messiah or something.
The next Jesus.
And he ended up like not wanting to take on that role, but he was very wise. Like there's a lot.
Did
if
he
you
have
watch,
powers like that DMT kid?
he
Rudolph?
didn't have any psychic abilities, but not that I know of. But he was just a very wise individual. Like there's all these like talks with him online and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Krishnamurti. But so Steiner left Theosophy, got involved in Freud. He started his own movement called anthroposophy.
What is that word?
Anthroposophy?
Yeah, I can't even spell it.
Anthroposophy.
Oh my God, I spelled it right.
Good job.
That's a modern day miracle. Magic is real.
You ever heard of like Waldorf schools?
No.
Really?
I've heard of Waldorf salad.
Waldorf
I don't know a lot of things, Daniel. I was raised in a traumatic household in Virginia, so I wasn't exposed to smart. If my freaking mom was a poet and an author, that'd be so cool.
East 79th Street, there's like a Waldorf school.
Okay,
very beautiful.
Yes,
So
yeah.
he basically, so he started just giving all these talks.
Okay.
And people would come up to him. They'd be like, "You have all these like amazing like esoteric ideas, but how do we apply them as
in my life.
teachers and like education, or like farmers and agriculture, and so then he helped them. So Waldorf school was like taking his esoteric ideas and applying them to childhood education.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's how you integrate those things into society.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
best
It's
way.
like, it's actually, I think it's like the largest like independent education movement in the world, actually.
Whoa, that's huge.
And so, but he, in his way of doing, like, he didn't think that children should start to read until they were like 7.
Really?
Yeah, because they should, because he believed that like that we have 4 different bodies: the physical body, the astral body, the etheric body, and the I, or the ego.
Okay.
And they're all kind of like together, and then they begin to like differentiate and separate out over time.
Fight each other, yeah.
But they don't fight each other, but I
Okay.
mean they differentiate out as we become an adult, and the sort of the sign that the physical and the etheric body are differentiating is when we get our like teeth, like as a child.
Oh.
So he didn't feel that we should start to learn how to read until our etheric and our physical bodies had differentiated.
So are there schools now that are operating that are not
Yeah.
encouraging reading until 7?
Yeah, well, they probably have made it less than 7 at this point, but later than anywhere
Later.
else. And there's a lot of use of like color and crafts, like handcraft and so on. He created his own like style of dancing. What was it
Really?
called again?
Dancing? What kind of dancing?
I'm trying to remember the name of it. Shoot, but it
That's
was like
so
a sort of
cute.
spiritual kind of like they were expressing his spiritual philosophy and movement and so on.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine incorporating, nourishing all those 4 bodies is a pivotal pivotal way to live a better life. Would you say?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, I think. Yeah. So yeah, and the number 7 was really important for him. So he said these bodies were differentiating at 7-year intervals. So you have like the physical body and the etheric body, then the physical body, the astral body, and finally when you're 21, the sort of the ego or the I separates. So yeah, I mean, so it's basically, I mean, when we're talking about these that are more kind of like subtle or kind of evanescent, I guess in a way. We need maps or whatever. We need at least like some kind of like constructs
to apply.
Yeah, to sort of obviously the problem is that most people are still like trapped in the sort of scientific worldview, but I really do believe that is also tilting in the favor of mysticism and esotericism.
That's so exciting.
Because more and more what quantum physicists kind of when they delved into the nature of reality in the 20th century. Ultimately, what became more and more apparent was that kind of like consciousness is actually the foundational reality. And what we're experiencing as the material world is actually more of a projection of a sort of underlying field of consciousness.
Okay.
This is like what Heisenberg and all these guys, Niels Bohr, like all like stated this in various ways. And the Nobel Prize. Can you put up that link from the Nobel Prize thing? The Nobel Prize in Physics this year just went to this crazy, we'll see if it pops up, these crazy experiments about quantum entanglement.
The fuck is that?
Quantum entanglement. How entanglements are positive. Yeah. So essentially, they've discovered that these tiny subatomic particles, if they're once connected, they maintain their connection even when they're incredibly far away from each other.
Wow.
Immediately. So there's no, because we generally think that the speed of light is the fastest constant or whatever. But what we've discovered is that these entangled particles stay connected no matter how big the distance is.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what that makes me think of is when when you relate it to humanity and being a person on planet Earth, it's like when you see someone that you feel like you've known for your whole life,
Yeah.
and you've just met them, and then you dive into past lives and all that stuff, and you're like, maybe we have met before. That familiarity is felt in your body.
Yeah.
So that's a similar concept, I imagine.
Actually, Steiner has a lot about that. I mean, he basically.
Man, Steiner was the shit.
I'm like obsessed with him.
Oh my
He's like
God.
one of my greatest heroes, actually. But I mean, he actually said at a certain point that he realized that he came back into the world as Steiner with a mission, and the mission of his life on Earth was to bring the knowledge of reincarnation back to the West.
Wow.
And he said that not only do people incarnate again and again, but also even the Earth itself reincarnates in different forms.
Oh, that's good to know. Really? The
Yeah.
Earth?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think you have a past life, or
Yeah,
do you
definitely.
recall?
Uh,
What cool stories have you gained from your experiences diving into that?
well, I mean, a few different types of experiences, but
Which one like moved you the
sometimes
most?
it's like I feel I'm a little bit shy about talking about stuff too easily because it's
Okay.
like we'll get there. But I mean, what about you?
I'm just too well. So I've done past life regressions.
Yeah, I did that
before.
too.
I did a future life
Yeah.
regression.
Okay.
That was fucking
Progression.
crazy.
Progression. I guess.
Progression.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Thank you. That was crazy. I think. I think it's super important, and this is part of my. I kind of had a talk with myself as I was diving into all these subjects
Yeah.
years ago, and I get too excited about shit, as you could probably.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that's too exciting.
I'm just so excited about it. I think it's the coolest thing ever, and thinking about it is like it makes me, like I said earlier, like it makes all the bullshit in my day-to-day life just like melt away. Like that's
Yeah.
not important. But I take everything with a grain of salt. And I think when I am skeptical, I latch onto that and I go, well, okay, prove me wrong then. I think skepticism is very important.
Yeah.
So with that said, with the past life thing, I read Dr. Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters. That was a game-changing book on the subject. I'm sure there are other ones, but I really like
He
the
was
fact
sort of hypnotic. Was he a regression? Did
yeah,
hypnotic past life regressions?
he wasn't doing regressions. He accidentally stumbled upon past life regressions by doing. He would hypnotize.
As a psychologist.
Hypnosis. He would
Right,
use
right, right.
hypnosis
Yeah.
as a form to like dig into people's traumas because when you
Yeah.
repress a memory, it's really hard to just like recall it at will. So
Right.
if you get, and then I learned being under hypnosis you're not passed out, you're not dreaming, you know
Yeah.
exactly what's happening. You're in a highly densely concentrated state of mind, which is very interesting. And then he accidentally stumbles upon past lives through this patient, Catherine.
But I mean, from a skeptic perspective, it's sort of interesting. There are lots of psychologists who probably use hypnotism,
Yeah.
but never stumble upon past lives.
Right. And why did he?
Yeah.
Who knows? But maybe his life purpose on this planet was to kind of open people's eyes on this,
Yeah.
That's something we'll never know. But the intriguing part about that, because past lives is such a far out there concept when I initially read about it, that I was like, bullshit. What? I don't know. And then when he talked about his patient, Catherine, recalling very intimate details about Dr. Weiss's family. Mainly, he had a newborn son that died at a very young age, not shortly before he started seeing this patient, Catherine. And then she recalled his father's full Hebrew name, all of these details that he would never talk to a patient about because he was a Yale, Harvard.
This was like her higher self or something.
Yeah, so in between the lives,
Right,
as
right,
she
right.
was recalling, one of the things that happened to her was she was on a trip with a person she was dating, and she was at a museum, and she started recalling all of these historic facts, and found that she knew more than the person giving the tour, and
Yeah.
she was flabbergasted by that. She was like, "Where the fuck did this come from? I don't know this stuff." And so that's what kind of made her open to the idea of possibly doing hypnosis with Dr. Weiss, because she was initially reluctant to it. And when they did the hypnosis and they dove into these past lives, it was the in-between life state that seemed like she had this like Jesus level knowledge of how everything works. And her pointing out, your son is here with your father and they're doing great, and he's like, what? That made me go, oh, okay, I think this is real. I actually really think this is real. And then when I got a past life regression, I had a goal with it, and it was particularly to understand the relationship I have with my mother is so complicated and difficult, and I love her, but the angst inside of me, it's just, there's so much. It's a hurricane of feelings. And so one of the first thoughts I had when I learned about past lives and the fact that you can reincarnate with the same people over and over again is there has to be a long line of lives with this woman. And so my goal was to see if anything came up. And when I got this particular regression, you're in this meditative state for about 30 minutes, but you're slowly kind of getting guided into the most still I have ever been in my whole life up until that point. And then you're in a hallway, you're in this beautiful garden, then you're in a hallway, and you go in front of a door and it opens, and then the woman who led the regression was like, just tell me what you see. And I was very, I reminded myself before the session, because I was worried I was going to make it up. And so, but I learned something about intuition. It comes to you so quickly and so easily that it does feel a little made up.
Yeah.
It's just it pops into your mind.
Well, Steiner once again identified what he talked about as like higher kind of like levels of cognition, which he talked about as intuition, imagination, and inspiration.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
I
how
just
does he
find
talk
out
about
these
how
days.
they feel? Like,
No, but I mean, maybe he does, but we can extrapolate on it.
yeah.
But I think that it's helpful to have these categories. But anyway, go ahead.
For
Yeah,
sure, for
yeah.
sure. And I open the door, and she goes, "What do you see? What do you feel? What do you smell?" I was put in a scene immediately. I was in a forest. The sun was setting. I had a burlap a cape on with a hood. I was carrying something. It was almost dark, but like if you looked through the trees, it was like this bright electric blue. That happens when the sun sets. It was very apparent. It was just right in front of me, and I knew I was going to a house of a person that was my ex-boyfriend, but he was in another incarnation. But and I was going to get, and all this just it punched me in the face. Like I just knew it right away, and I was
Yeah.
talking really fast to get it all out to her. But I was going to buy poison. I was 16 to kill my mom, who is my mom now, because if I didn't kill her, she was going to kill me. I didn't know why. There was a lot of mental illness, but that's also something that's in this life. So I don't know if maybe that's why I was like, am I making this up?
Yeah.
But all of this information just flooded me. Like I was getting hit by a wave of information. And I was so taken aback by that. I thought it was so interesting. And then we went through a couple other lives with my mom. I was her mom
Wow.
once, and she died
Wow.
when she was 2. But all this information just
Did you see that movie Cloud Atlas?
no. But
Oh,
I want to.
Oh yeah.
What's it about?
It's a really fascinating. Well, it's from a book novel. I haven't read the novel, but it's an incredible movie about reincarnation and sort of soul
Ooh.
clusters and stuff like that.
Oh, so yeah, that stuff's fascinating. But yeah, it made me realize, and I've had a nightmare since I had a nightmare when I was 3 years old that I'll never forget, and it's very. I remember it was black and white, and I was in a giant castle, and it was pouring rain, and I was a kid. I was like 3 in the dream. And my mom was trying to come in, but it wasn't my mom. She was like half robot, and she was like, there's wires that were like producing sparks, and she was like, "Let me in, let me in." It was like terrifying, and I was like, I have to let her in. She's my mom, and I like that, like images from that dream came up in a past life regression, and I was like, oh shit, this is some dark, interesting little links that I'm creating, and. You can never have, I don't have proof that this is real, except that it gives me a perspective that's helpful in my day-to-day life. So that's really all.
Yeah, no, I had a similarly, surprisingly, interesting, vaguely convincing experience with past life regression where I expected nothing to happen. And they're like you go into this cloud and then there's like, what do you see? And you sort of follow something. And once I was kind of like a woman, Victorian artist, young woman who, wanted to be a painter, and we were like riding around in like carriages, stagecoaches or something, and then she got tuberculosis and passed away, so she never got to fulfill her artistic ambition. And then another one, I was sort of like an evil kind of like sort of Eastern, kind of priest or sultan or a prince or sultan or something who had like, killed evil. Yeah, I had like tortured, killed, like. Harem, slaves, killed brothers in wars and so on. Actually, it's funny. I was just anyway. Yeah, so that also was fascinating. Then the last one was like not a human being. I was sort of like a cartoon witch on the astral plane.
What?
With like very long, like thin fingers and like a crystal ball and so on.
That's
very strange.
Did the person that was leading you through this regression have you do that thing where you go, "What did you learn? Like, what was the lesson of this life?
Oh, interesting.
What did you carry? Is there something you carry? Because one of the most fascinating things that I find about past lives.
We should bring some past life therapists on.
Yeah. Because people can cure certain ailments that they have or certain things in their life, emotional issues, mental issues, through a past life regression. That's the part that I'm like, whoa. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Like you can actually have. And it's similar to psychedelics. You can have the learning about this one guy who had such debilitating OCD that he was like, if I don't fix this, I'm going to kill myself because this is just not a way to live. And I'm not a suicidal person, but this, it's my mind is taken over by this. He had one therapeutic session with psilocybin and his OCD went away. And then reading stories about how past lives can give you a big understanding of why you hate somebody or why you have these certain mental, emotional tendencies. That is the most eye-opening part of all of this, is the knowledge you can gain.
For people, which is probably the majority of people, who are still very skeptical about this, there's an interesting professor, Ian Stevenson, from the University of Virginia, and he spent his whole career finding children who had spontaneous past life recall. And then he would bring the children back to the families they had, remembered coming from. So you might, and a lot of them, but not all of them, were in cultures that had like a tradition, understanding of past lives. So a lot of like India and Pakistan and so on. But he would find the kids, and he would bring them back. There would be a reunion, but also sometimes the kids would have prominent birthmarks, like a mark on their neck or something, and then they would look at autopsy photographs, or even
that was how they died. Or
they would,
injured.
yeah, exactly.
That's very compelling. And the show Surviving Death on Netflix that I watched, that was something that kicked it off for me. That's where I discovered Laura Lynn Jackson, who's a psychic medium. But I believe it was the last episode they did. It was a docuseries on reincarnation, and they had, I think might have been the University of Virginia. They had a whole
University of Virginia is the place.
Department dedicated to studying this, and it's an ongoing study. And so parents would take their kids and be like, why is my kid naming this World War II bomber plane that he doesn't even know how to read yet, and he knows the exact name of a bomber plane? I don't understand this. And then that's, speaking of proof, like that's how you can get some semblance of proof that this child is just uttering out all these military commands.
Sure. I mean, you could also say that it's we don't really know yet, like if there's like a one-to-one correspondence, like, when you remember these past lives, were they actually your past lives, or they were like, kind of like preserved kind of memories in sort of the quantum realm that actually had like a sort of resonance.
Yeah.
It was more like a quantum resonance or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then there are some cultures for which this is so routine. Like, I was in Ibiza in the fall for visiting a friend, and there was a party, and I met a Tibetan Lama there who runs a monastery in Bhutan. And obviously in the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they totally just have a knowledge around this stuff. Like the lamas are reincarnations. And he told me a story about his father, really fascinating, with something called the rainbow body. Have you heard of that? So essentially when certain high-level Tibetan masters pass away.
Oh, their bodies shrink?
Yeah, their bodies shrink. Yeah, they're photographs of these like tiny little bodies. Sometimes sometimes they even just disappear and leave only their hair and fingernails.
Whoa.
So he said that his father, who was a lama, passed away and achieved the rainbow body at death.
Wow.
And then his father was in the spirit world and didn't want to come back to Earth. He was done with it.
Yeah.
And the son actually begged him in the spirit world to come back to Earth. And then he said very matter-of-factly, now my father's like a 4-year-old boy in Bhutan.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was extraordinary about it was just how matter-of-fact it was for him, Actually, I really want to visit that Lama. He was really fascinating.
That's amazing. And there's cases of kids. There is the documentary series I mentioned, Surviving Death. They interviewed a kid who they were interviewing the mom first. The kid was maybe 3 or 4, and he was saying things like, oh, well, my last mommy, and she was just talking very matter-of-factly. Like, oh, my last mommy didn't let me do this. And she's like, what? I'm your mom. What are we talking about here? And then she looked up, eventually found the guys at University of Virginia, and they did a study, and they took this, he was murdered on a playground in a past life.
Yeah.
They took this little boy to the mom, who's still around. Like, this was very, one thing that surprised me about that particular case was he died, and then 4 years later is another person.
Insane.
With another family.
Yeah. Well, apparently if somebody, according to the Ian Stevenson work, if somebody dies young from a violent kind of accident or something, they tend to reincarnate much quicker because the soul has a really big desire to get like right back into the action. It's like didn't get to do what it was planning to do or wanted to do.
Oh wow, very interesting. And then he went back and then there was another case of a little boy similar that they took this little boy to the family that he had left, and there are these grown ass people that were like, "That's my dad. That was my dad." Like that was basically, and he did recall certain memories of where things were in the house that he'd never been to in this life.
Yeah, no, there's so many things to say about it. To zoom out for a second, if we think about like a materialist society like America,
America's materialist? What?
No, but people have a kind of desperation to, because they think that this life is it. So they feel they have to reach a high level of success, and they want to have like, they want to have, the fancy cars and the many girlfriends if you're a guy, or like, whatever the status is, that you want to achieve.
Many boyfriends if you're a girl.
Many boyfriends if you're a girl. Exactly. Yeah. So, if you go to like India, I haven't been there actually for many years, and now it may have shifted a bit. But there was a sense, even with very poor people, they just seem there's like a base level of happiness and contentment because you don't really think that this life is all there is. Like you have a understanding or even let's say a kind of knowledge
Yeah.
that there's a much larger continuum. And, maybe you're not going to be Donald Trump or
Hopefully not.
Andrew Tate, in this life,
Yeah.
or whatever. But, maybe, or the Buddha or something, but
Yeah.
maybe 20 lives in, if you live decently and kind of, do what you're meant to do, there'll be this ongoing cycle,
Yeah, that's an interesting. I never thought about the factor that the effect that it has, thinking that there's nothing else beyond this life, and that can fuel this sense of urgency and greed, frankly, that drives
Yeah, I mean,
consumerism, capitalism, all of these things that don't actually matter. And I think when you talk to anybody that has, a lot of money or material things, like the feeling that a material possession gives you, and I've had the opportunity to have some material possessions that I'm like I drive a Mustang, and that's, I just know it's not a drastically expensive car, but like it's a nice car, and and I've been wanting it for a really long time. When I got it, I was like, yes, but then I'm like, oh, this actually doesn't matter
yeah.
because it vibrates with you on a different level. And then when you have an experience like doing a past life regression, and there's a little piece of a puzzle that you never thought you'd have, of like that explains possibly a dynamic or the rage behind your relationship with your mother, you're like, oh, fuck the Mustang.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Like, it's
Yeah, but for me, like substantiating this type of stuff, which is difficult to do because
Yeah.
everybody who's a skeptic or a materialist will have many different ways that they'll reject it or
yeah
ridicule it or not take it seriously. But if we really could change the cultural understanding, the cultural paradigm,
yeah
it would be the most important thing that we could accomplish because I mentioned like the Amazon, how we're sucking all the oil out. I mean, this idea of like, the focus of our civilization is totally on like technology, progress, material progress. Like everybody has to have a better, style of life than previous generations, even though we know that we've sort of hit like the finite resource limits on the planet, and it's
Yeah.
just not happening anymore. Like we're not going to be able to expand in those ways. So it's almost like we need like a different vision for humanity, like a different direction to go in.
Have you read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer?
I read some of it.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Like I said, had a lot of childhood trauma, and I had this period where maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I discovered the definition of what that is, like the concept of trauma.
Yeah.
I got paired with a therapist, and they're like, "Oh, this." I had my first session, and she goes, "Oh, that's why they put you in the trauma unit." And I was like, "I haven't been through trauma. What are you talking about?" And then that kicked off this like just endless reading of books on the subject and kind of really grasping that subject. And then I started branching out, and because I got sick of reading just about that because it's very depressing. And some concepts like Michael Singer talks about in The Untethered Soul. One of them is, he doesn't use the word childhood trauma, which I really like about that book. He just talks about people, it's just hard to deal with your emotions. And if you don't have a handle on your emotions, and you take all the thoughts that go in and out of your brain every day as who you are, you're going to live a fucked up existence, and it's not going to be fun. For most people, it's not fun inside their head. And as a result, we try to seek fun outside. And so we're doing it wrong, basically. We're trying to seek validation, or trying to seek, when all we really want is the feelings of love and happiness, is really what it comes down to. And everybody seeks that through different ways. And a lot of times they're fear motivated because they don't understand what's happening in their mind. And so it seems like, what you were saying earlier with the materialist society, we're looking at these outside things to give us the feeling that we really could be getting from the inside.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, this whole idea of the singularity. Have you heard of that?
No.
Ray Kurzweil, he's like a director at Google. So basically the idea is that technology is speeding up and exponentially.
Yeah.
And so now we see that with like artificial intelligence and this, AI art and AI generated text and AI generated software that essentially it's going to hit kind of like a, acceleration point. And among the things that will be transformed will be like, will in some sense, in our individual ego, body encased ego, we'll be able to extend our lifespans indefinitely or forever.
Yeah.
Like Kurzweil talks about, live long enough to live forever. So that could happen either through kind of like making our cells so they don't age anymore.
Well, women are already trying to do that.
Everybody's trying to do that. Like
Yeah.
I was just hearing about like stem cell injections and so on.
Where do you get them?
Mexico, you want to go?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's interesting. But
Can't hurt to look younger.
there's a lot of research on anti-aging happening right now.
Oh,
Like they're
really?
de-aging mice and so on.
Well, do you think that's stemming from that's fear-based?
Well, I mean, I kind of think that yes, in a way, because if you believe that the ego, if your consciousness is completely trapped in your body, your soul, there is no soul, then the only kind of redemption, quote unquote, would be somehow making it immortal, immortalizing your consciousness. And that could
Right.
be, they talk about uploading into silicon, Neuralink as a means to Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so the idea is to have
Sounds
a
scary.
brain implant, but ultimately you'd be able to sort of transfer your consciousness to a neural network or something like that.
That's so lame. Does that excite you? Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Maybe evolving and dying and coming back. Like, people are so afraid of death.
Exactly.
And I'm just not afraid of death.
Okay.
Not to sound
I'm
like
a little
too
afraid
cool
of death,
for
but
school.
God for you. Good for you.
But the research I've done on it, I'm like, oh, death is not something to be feared at all. I mean, no one wants to experience a violent death or a painful death, but the pain will eventually subside. And you'll go
Personally,
on.
I don't mind dying if I could already lucid dream all the time.
Can you lucid dream?
Every now and then, but I would love to be able to lucid dream a lot more because I think there's a relationship between being able to hold your consciousness in like the dream state and then actually being able to hold it together after you pass away. And this is this is what the Tibetans also talk about a lot.
Well, the third subject that I have on my list is mediumship and like death. I'm oddly obsessed with death ever since I discovered it. And if we're going back to like my little origin story, the stories that I've read about in, for example, The Light Between Us and Signs, which are 2 books by Laura Lynn Jackson, who's the medium I discovered on Surviving Death. The stories were some of the most profound stories of healing through 2 people, one who was dead and one who was alive, that I'd ever heard. There was a lot of stories between a parent and a child, specifically that the parent was abusive while they were alive, and going all the way to the extreme of like there was sexual abuse or there was drug addiction or whatever. Something occurred that made the parent absent emotionally. And the apology that was given in this book that I was reading brought me to my knees because I'd never heard anything like it. And I started realizing that all of these stories of communication through somebody who's passed away and through somebody who's alive, the person who's passed away sheds all of their bullshit. They shed their ego, they shed their fear, they shed their OCD, they shed whatever they had, and they're just left to their purest self, their soul or their spirit, I guess you could say. And so So I thought, I think, one of my personal things is with my mom, I can't get through to her. And but I'm like, I know that there's a way. And I don't mean this to be in a morbid way in any way, but I genuinely think I could have a beautiful relationship with her after she passes. Not that I want her to die, but like, I think that, that is when I can have this like pure, beautiful relationship and understanding and be like seen and heard, which is what every, kid needs.
How old is she now?
She's in her early 60s, I believe. I don't talk to her. I cut contact with her. But
I mean, the other thing would be, of course, trying the psychedelic route, like MDMA or ayahuasca or something like that.
I've done MDMA, but
with her?
in the club.
No, I meant with her.
Oh, I never considered that.
Yeah.
You know what? I would though. If that's a real extreme leap for her, but I know she's in there.
Yeah.
I know she's in there in her body and her brain.
I think that you recognize the sort of the wisdom of experience is that people are just conditioned in a certain way in this life, and barring something like a transformative psychedelic initiation, they're probably stuck at a certain point.
Yeah, because she's had a lot of trauma.
Yeah,
woman's been through a lot. She really is a strong person considering all that.
Yeah. But then sometimes you're not going to work it out in this life.
Right. But with me, have you had experiences with mediumship or communicating with somebody who's passed away?
Well,
through mediumship or through, you mentioned a psychedelic experience where you thought you got to speak with your father or at least felt him.
That's true. I mean, I've never really worked with a medium.
Okay.
I did write this little book, which Gabe, if you want to post it, this afterlife book, where I was looking at different ideas. I think that's how you got interested in my work to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Different ideas and theories around, is there consciousness after death? What form could it take? I got really fascinated with this group called the Society for Psychical Research.
Mm-hmm.
So, essentially like the late 19th century, science hadn't like totally like coagulated or crystallized the way it did to totally reject, psychic phenomena and paranormality and so on. There were a group of high level like scientists, like one of like the inventors of electromagnetism and all the discoverers, who formed the Society for Psychic Research. And they were, very, very fascinated with mediumship and the paranormal. And the guy, one of the founders of the group, this guy, Frederick Meyer, he didn't publish it while he was published posthumously, but he spent like a decade or whatever writing his kind of opus, which was the survival of the human personality after bodily death.
Personality.
And so he had all these different accounts and mediumships and so on. And he made a wager with some of his other founders of the society that whoever died first would make an attempt to communicate about the after realm and actually talk about what it was like in this other world. So then after he passed away, I think it was like 1901 or something, all these mediums started getting messages from him.
Oh, wow.
And then his friends would gather, they would sit with these different mediums, and the mediums would basically go into like a different way of talking. Like the mediums would not be like
the channeling in a way.
Sophisticated, philosophically trained, but they would be suddenly using all these philosophical concepts. They basically, he was there in the room and he could answer any question. He would apparently talk about what it was like in the afterworld.
What did he say?
He said it was actually
great.
What's that?
I heard it's great.
He said it was actually quite his experience of it was that it was quite similar. He said it was like
similar to Earth,
made out of a different particle, but that it was like at first it was quite similar to Earth. Like you would you could have like a home, you could have like a family, you could have like a work or whatever.
Okay.
So in a way, like it's almost like you're the sort of the kind of fluidity of your consciousness or what your expectations are kind of almost define a little bit about what happens to you in these other dimensions.
Oh.
So, but he said that after a while, if you began to sort of gain a deeper understanding, then you could transition to other layers or dimensions of the afterworld where you had more creative control over how you appeared and how you expressed yourself.
If you gain more understanding while you're a person on this earth?
No, in the afterworld.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was still a learning process.
Is there capitalism in the afterlife? Because I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not.
Oh, that would really suck.
I don't think so.
Yeah, you can't fuck up the environment in the afterlife.
Yeah, that's
true. We're all just
perfectly
spiritual beings.
My personal theory about it, which I don't have any, like substantiation for this. I mean, do you know how much of the universe is made of dark matter and dark energy?
A lot, right?
Yeah, take a guess.
I don't want it to be this, but like 70%.
95%.
That fucking blows.
So dark matter and dark energy. Our math doesn't work there. There are no particles that we can understand there. We basically don't understand anything about it.
Huh.
And so that's 95% of the universe. So maybe that's sort of this like antimatter afterworlds where there's like a whole realm for these these sort of spirits to exist in some kind of quantum otherness state.
Right. Well, the afterlife, I wouldn't have guessed that it would be in the universe. It's another realm. It seems like another.
Sure, but it has to be connected with our realm.
Connected somehow.
I mean, that's the whole theory around DMT, right? Like that methyltryptamine, that
the spirit molecule.
The spirit molecule. So the theory is that somehow it might be like a conducive medium that when it appears in fetal development, it brings the soul into the body and then it releases it at death. I mean, this is like
release to the pineal gland, right?
Yeah. The idea is that the pineal gland may produce DMT, and the pineal gland is obviously a very interesting organ. I mean, it was Descartes called it like the seat of the soul. It's basically like this little thing in the center of the brain.
Looks like the Eye of Horus, right? In a way.
Look at the Eye of the Horus. I'm not sure.
I've read about just.
I thought it was a little bit like a
pine cone.
Pine cone.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, pine cone is one representation of it in ancient art and so on.
Oh, okay.
But in some animals, like in reptiles, the pineal gland actually has like a third a lens and a cornea, so it's almost like an evolutionary third eye.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so I mean, Strassman was when he was doing his research, he was also a practicing Buddhist. And he had discovered that according to Buddhism, the soul reincarnates 7 weeks or 49 days after death.
Wow.
And then he discovered that when the fetus was developing in the womb, the pineal gland appeared in the fetus 49 days or 7 weeks after conception.
Wow.
So he felt that this was really a numinous correspondence, and
Yeah.
it might indicate that actually when the pineal gland forms and when DMT is created, is this, as I said, it's this the soul then comes into the body at that point.
Right, right. Well, the one question I have left for you is, you've written so much about, I mean, I'm excited to dive into these topics more and talk to experts and to experience the thing when applicable, the psychedelic or the mediumship or the somebody who's been claimed to have been abducted by aliens. Do you know people who've claimed to have been abducted by aliens?
Yeah, many, yeah.
Do you believe them?
Well, okay. I mean, once again, I mean, it's going to take a little while to tease out. I mean, I think like if we understand that that consciousness is the foundational reality, then all experiences we're having are within consciousness. The reality we're experiencing is more like a dream. It's not as literally real as our Western worldview has us believe. This is like, this idea that like we're very fixated on literal things being literally true and literally real, whereas like a lot of indigenous cultures didn't necessarily see such a strong division between even like soul and body or the spirit realm and the physical realm. There's more like a continuum, and that makes sense if we have this quantum entanglement and this idea that the universe itself is not locally real in a way that this begins to open up different possibilities within consciousness that could actually have real effects. But yeah, so some of these kind of alien encounter experiences, they're definitely things that are happening within consciousness, as everything is. But we have to do some digging and some work to give them the proper kind of like understanding.
Yeah. So given all this research that you've done, and you've written so many books about all of these subjects, and you've talked to people about these subjects, and you've immersed yourself in these subjects and things like psychedelics and psychic phenomena, and you've spent so much of your life just taking in all this knowledge, do you have an answer to what's the point of life on Earth?
Yeah, creativity.
Oh, I love that. Because mine was, I think it's to love and be loved. But I love that. Creativity that's so cool.
Love and be loved is fantastic. Also.
When did you come to the conclusion of creativity?
Well, I think, if you think of this, unified consciousness that can only experience itself by creating sort of containers of consciousness, like humans. And it does that in order to learn about its creative abilities and possibilities, also, as you say, to love and so on. But I think it's creative exploration.
Yeah, and that does feel the best. Yeah, sometimes it feels better than sex.
That's for sure.
It can feel better that like think of like all the cool things that you can experience as a human. And I gotta say, when you list them out, there's a lot of beautiful experiences that we have at our disposal, for lack of a better word, that we can experience relationship wise. But creating and being in the creative flow with whatever it is. I think people with mathematical careers might not assume they're creative, but they're so every single, if you're a human, you're creative. Creating and doing something like you're good at that you love, there's nothing much that beats that, really. Yeah. Except like maybe talking to ghosts or aliens.
Yeah, I mean, synchronicity as like maybe a principle of the universe, like the time itself is like an art project, like when you're in flow, like you're completely aware that that it's like that actually.
Have you ever had a really crazy synchronicity experience?
Yeah, I've had very many. Yeah.
Any ones that you would be comfortable sharing that stand out?
Yeah. I mean, have you had one that you would want to share?
There's, I don't know if it's chalked up to synchronicity or what, but like more of a wow, what a small world. But I believe like there are no coincidences from all the knowledge that I've gained, and like the whole, oh, what a small world, that's not a coincidence either. Like that's, so my parents, I love the story of how they met. My mom was 9 years younger than my dad. They met in Florida. He was stationed there. She was there on a trip, and they met at a pool hall because the owner knew that they were both from New Jersey. And they got to talking and found out that my mom's mother was his Sunday school teacher in the same town in New Jersey. And I'm like, what the like shit like that blows my mind. And I'm like, oh, there's like a divine or spiritual or bigger order to things. And the universe, like life does this really beautiful dance that you can see if you really open your eyes to it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most, kind of convincing synchronicities for me was many years ago when I was writing my second book, 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is the like feathered serpent. It's like the sort of snake deity of the
Oh.
Mayans. And I'd handed in the book, and my editor hated the first draft, so I had to rewrite the whole book, and it was
Oh,
very
fun.
daunting. And I decided to drink ayahuasca in my house with two friends. So we brewed it up and we drank it. And ayahuasca is also known as like the cosmic serpent. There's a really cool book by this guy Jeremy Narby called The Cosmic Serpent. And so we started sort of early in the evening, and the whole trip I was thinking about like my writer's block and Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, and the cosmic serpent. And after we finished this little ceremony, we were still totally awake and everything. We went down my block where there's a sake bar, and they went inside to smoke to drink sake. I stayed outside and rolled a cigarette, and I saw this little thing sticking out of a tree, and I pulled it out, and it was like a metal pen from the turn of the century in the shape of a snake.
Jesus Christ, that's so cool.
Yeah, I'll bring it into one of our sessions.
Those stories, that is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
That to me, and one of the reasons why I'm so moved by these stories is like, that's there is magic. I know people define it or call it something else, but like there is something going on beyond what you see, beyond the materialistic
there may
world.
only be magic.
I agree, and I'm glad a smart person said that, because I also think that. But if I say it, it's like, oh, she's Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
But you've written books, and you're an intellectual person, so it has more weight coming from you, frankly. Yeah, and that's proof of the magic of life. That's that pen? That's insane. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, fuck, life's crazy.
It is pretty
It's
crazy.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up, but
Okay, cool.
I'm excited to explore these topics deeper with you.
Thank you, Krystyna. Great to chat.
And to have a friend that has knowledge. That's so cool. You're like a treasure chest, Daniel.
I don't really. I mean,
Thank you for gifting
I very much
society.
like the whole the Delphic oracle was like, why is Socrates the wisest person? Now, it's like he doesn't know anything. He alone knows that he doesn't know anything.
Yeah,
So
right.
I don't actually feel that I know anything. Like in fact, before we had this conversation, I was thinking to myself, like, I literally like have nothing to say today and like don't know a thing. So I'm glad that something came out. But
A lot of shit came out.
Yeah, generally I don't feel like somebody who has a lot of everything is in process.
Well, that's the mark of a true smart person, is humility and the knowledge that we don't know jack shit. We only, the things that our human brain can learn in this lifetime is just a pinch of what's actually out there. And speaking of that, one of the things that I have done with my 10 years of podcasting, co-hosting Guys We Fucked is, and I think it's one of our most valuable sources of information, is other people's stories. So if you're listening or watching and you have an experience with these topics that we've talked about, aliens, psychedelics, mediumship, psychic phenomena, email us because we want to hear from you. It's waitwhat.mailbox@gmail.com. I want to hear your stories because the stories that I've heard from people so far, they're part of what changed my perspective on being a human on this planet Earth.
Me too, for sure. Because your own experiences are not enough. You need to have verification,
Absolutely.
validation. And hearing from other people. Ultimately, it adds up. It's like a cumulative.
Yes, and I often think, too, especially when I'm like butting heads with somebody or like somebody else's opinion pisses me off, which sometimes it does, is that every individual human being on this planet is a culmination of every second of their life from the moment they exited their mother's body until right now when you're talking to them. That is what informs their thoughts, their opinions, their emotions, in addition to all this other stuff. But like that, so when you think about it that way, there's so much value to get from everybody in your life, from any human you pass, at the fucking deli, at the grocery store, your best friend, your partner.
You don't think that a lot of them are NPCs?
Was that?
Non-playable characters?
I don't know. They could be. I'm open to that. However, I do think that we cross paths. Like every person has something valuable to offer the world.
I think it's beautiful.
Really do think that.
See, but also having that belief is going to create a world where that's your reality.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a reality I want to be a part of, baby.
All right. Thank you so much. It was great to hang out.
Yeah. Looking forward to the next time. Let's get fucked up on psychedelics and aliens.